Yuna loved the observation deck more than any other place on the station. She would sit by the large window for hours, pressing her small hands against the cold glass, watching ships come and go like fireflies in the endless dark. Some were huge cargo vessels that moved slowly, carrying goods from distant worlds. Others were small and fast, zipping past the station like excited birds. Each one had a story, her mother always said. Each one carried people going somewhere important. She was 8 years old, and she had lived on orbital station Harmony 7 for 3 months now. It felt like home already. The station was shaped like a giant wheel, spinning slowly in space to create gravity. Over 40 different species lived here together, trading goods, sharing knowledge, and trying to get along. It was not always easy. Some species breathed different air. Some needed water to survive. Some could not stand bright lights. But somehow, they all made it work. Yuna's father, Taiho, was an engineer. He spent his days deep in the station's belly, fixing machines and keeping the old reactor running. He came home tired every night, his hands covered in grease and strange oils, but he always had energy to play with her before bedtime. He would lift her up on his shoulders and call her his little star. Her mother, Somi, was a xenobiologist and diplomat. That meant she studied alien life and helped different species talk to each other. She knew 17 languages and was learning 3 more. She had a gentle way of speaking that made even the angriest aliens calm down. Yuna wanted to be like her when she grew up. There were not many humans on the station. Only 42, including Yuna. They were spread across different jobs in different decks, but they all knew each other. Every Sunday, they gathered in the human common room for dinner. Uncle Menho, who was not really her uncle, but insisted she call him that, always brought sweets from his trading stock. He was a merchant who sold earth goods to curious aliens. Chocolate was his best seller. Apparently, most species found it absolutely addictive. Yuna had made friends among the alien children, too. Her best friend was a Fulhari cub named Pix. The Fulhari were small and covered in soft brown fur, with big round eyes and ears that twitched when they were happy. Pix was shy and scared of loud noises, but she was also very funny once you got to know her. They spent hours playing in the recreation hub, building towers with magnetic blocks and racing toy hovercrafts. The Mavari children were fun too. They were aquatic beings who lived in special water tanks, but could wear bubble suits to walk around the dry parts of the station. They told the best jokes, though Yuna did not always understand them. Alien humor was strange. Sometimes life on the station was good, quiet, safe, or at least it had been. Everything changed when the Torvan delegation arrived. Yuna remembered the day clearly. She was on the observation deck, as usual, when she saw their ship approach. It was black and angular, like a blade cutting through space. No curves, no soft edges. It looked mean somehow. She did not like it. The Torvan walked off their ship like they owned the station. They were huge, at least 3 meters tall, covered in dark green scales that looked like armor. Their heads were flat and wide, with yellow eyes that never seemed to blink. They had claws on their hands and feet, thick tails that swayed behind them, and mouths full of sharp teeth. When they walked, the floor shook. Everyone moved out of their way. The small Felhari pressed against the walls. The Mavari retreated to their tanks. Even the station security officers seemed nervous. Yuna watched from a distance, hiding behind a support beam. There were 5 Torvan in total. 4 adults and 1 young one. The young one was still massive, almost as tall as a grown human man, even though Yuna later learned he was only 12 cycles old. His name was Vrek, and he was the son of Ambassador Dren, the leader of the delegation. Yuna did not know why, but something about Vrek made her stomach feel cold. Over the next few days, she learned to avoid him. All the children did. Vrek was a bully. There was no other word for it. He roamed the youth sections of the station like a predator, looking for weak targets. He mocked the Fulhari cubs for being small and scared. He threatened the Mavari by pretending he would drink their tank water. He knocked over games, stole toys, and laughed when others cried. The adults did nothing. Ambassador Dren was an important guest, here to negotiate some kind of trade deal. Nobody wanted to upset him by punishing his son. So Vrek did whatever he wanted, and everyone else just tried to stay out of his way. Yuna managed to avoid him for almost a week. But on the 7th day, her luck ran out. She was walking through the lower corridor, heading back from the observation deck, when she turned a corner and found herself face to face with him. He was alone, leaning against the wall, picking at his claws. His yellow eyes locked onto her immediately. Yuna froze. Her heart beat fast, but she remembered what her father had taught her. Never run from a predator. Running makes them chase you. Stand still. Stay calm. Do not show fear. She took a breath and forced herself to relax. Vrek tilted his head, stunning her. He had never seen a human child up close before. She was so small, so soft. No scales, no claws, no sharp teeth. Pink skin that looked like it would tear easily. Big dark eyes that stared at him without blinking. He stepped closer, expecting her to run. She did not. He growled, low and threatening. Most species would have screamed. She did not. Instead, she looked up at him and said, "Hello." Vrek blinked. This was wrong. This tiny creature should be terrified. Why was she not terrified? He leaned down until his face was close to hers. His breath was hot and smelled like meat. "You should be scared of me," he said. Yuna swallowed hard. She was scared. Very scared. But she did not let it show. Why? She asked Dodd. He did not have an answer. No one had ever asked him that before. He stared at her for a long moment, confused and angry. Then he snorted and walked away, his tail slapping against the wall as he went. Yuna let out a shaky breath and hurried back to her family's quarters. She did not tell her parents about the encounter. She did not want to worry them, but deep down, she knew it was not over. She had seen the look in Vrek's eyes. He was not done with her. He had decided something in that moment. He had decided she needed to learn fear, and he would be the one to teach her. 3 days passed. Yuna tried to forget about Vrek. She went to her lessons, played with Pix, and helped her mother sort alien plant samples. Normal things. Safe things. She almost convinced herself that the scary Torvan boy had forgotten about her too. She was wrong. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon, station time. Yuna was in the recreation hub with the other children. The hub was a large open space filled with games, toys, and soft climbing structures. It was supposed to be a safe place for children of all species to play together. Supposed to be .yun, I was building a tower with Pix when the room went quiet. The kind of quiet that happens when everyone suddenly stops breathing. She looked up and saw Vrek standing in the doorway. His yellow eyes scanned the room until they found her. He smiled. It was not a nice smile. Pix grabbed Yuna's arm. "We should go," she whispered, her fur standing on end. "Please, Yuna, we should go now." But Vrek was already walking toward them, and there was no way out except through him. The other children scattered like leaves in a storm. Fulhari cubs ran for the exits. Mavari younglings rolled their bubble suits toward the water tanks. In seconds, the recreation hub was empty, except for Yuna, Pix, and Vrek. Pix tried to pull Yuna toward a side door, but Yuna gently removed her friend's hand. "Go find help," she said quietly. "Get an adult." "I cannot leave you alone with him," Pix said, her voice shaking. "Please, Pix, go. I will be okay." Pix hesitated for one terrible moment. Then she ran, her small feet pattering against the floor, as she disappeared through the side door. Yuna stood alone. Vrek stopped a few steps away from her, his massive form blocking the light. He was so much bigger than her. His head nearly touched the ceiling. His claws were each longer than her fingers. "You did not run," he said. "Again. Running makes you chase," Yuna replied. Her voice was steady, but her hands were trembling behind her back. Smart little prey. Vrek circled her slowly, like a shark around a small fish. "But you still do not fear me." "Why? Everyone fears me. Even the adults." "Why not you?" Yuna did not answer. She did not know what to say. Vrek growled. "I think you are broken. I think you do not understand danger. Let me help you understand." He moved fast. Too fast. One moment he was circling. The next his clawed hand was wrapped around her arm. He lifted her off the ground like she weighed nothing at all. His claws dug into her skin, breaking through. Warm blood ran down her arm. The pain was sharp and terrible, but Yuna did not scream. She bit her lips so hard she tasted blood. She would not give him what he wanted. She would not. Vrek's eyes widened. He had expected crying. He had expected begging. This tiny creature just stared at him with wet eyes and a bleeding lip, silent and defiant. "Scream," he demanded. "Scream for me." Yuna shook her head. Something dark twisted in Vrek's expression. Frustration, anger, hatred. He drew back his arm and threw her. She hit the wall hard. There was a sound, a horrible cracking sound, and then pain exploded through her entire body. Her arm bent in a way it should not bend. White light flashed behind her eyes. And finally, she screamed, not in fear. In pain, she crumpled to the floor, clutching her broken arm, tears streaming down her face. The world spun around her. She could hear Vrek laughing, a deep ugly sound that echoed through the empty room. "There," he said. "Now you understand." He stepped toward her, ready to continue his lesson. But he never got the chance. The door slammed open. Minho stood in the doorway. He was not a large man. Average height, average build, with a friendly face and a merchant smile. He sold chocolate and earth toys. He told bad jokes at Sunday dinners. He was nobody special. But when he saw Yuna on the floor, broken and bleeding, and the Torvan juvenile standing over her, something changed. His face went blank. Not angry, not sad. Just empty. Like someone had blown out a candle behind his eyes and left only darkness. He walked into the room. His steps were slow and measured. His hands hung loose at his sides. He did not raise his voice. He did not make threats. He simply looked at Vrek and said, in a voice as cold as deep space, "You have made a terrible mistake." Vrek laughed. "You? A little soft thing like you? What will you do?" "I will break you, like I broke her." Minho did not respond. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device, no bigger than a coin. Every human on the station carried one. It was called an emergency beacon, and it was only supposed to be used for one reason. When a human child was in danger, he pressed the button. Across the station, 41 other devices began to beep dot in the engineering section. Taiho looked at his beacon and felt his heart stop. In the diplomatic wing, Somi saw her beacon flash and dropped a tablet she was holding. In the security hub, Jiho checked his beacon and immediately reached for his communication console. They all received the same message: human child attacked. Location: Recreation Hub, Youth Section. And they all started moving dot in the station's command center. Commander Alice was reviewing supply reports when her console lit up with an emergency alert. She was Felhari, small and gray-furred, with 20 years of experience running Harmony 7. She had seen many crises. But when she read the alert, her blood went cold. Human child attacked. All humans responding. Her hands moved before her mind caught up. She hit the lockdown button. Throughout the station, alarms began to wail. Corridor bulkheads slammed shut. Transit pods stopped in their tracks. The station's I announced a security emergency in a calm, mechanical voice. Commander, Alice knew something that most species did not. She knew what humans really were. They were not the soft, friendly creatures they appeared to be. They came from a death world, a planet so dangerous that most species could not survive there for a single day. They had hunted monsters. They had tamed fire and lightning. They had walked on their own moon, and they protected their children with a fury that defied all reason. She had seen it once before, many years ago. A slaver had tried to take a human child. The humans had found him. What they left behind had given her nightmares for months. Now 42 humans were on her station. 42 Deathworlders who had just learned that one of their children was hurt. And they were all moving toward the same place. Alice grabbed her communicator and shouted orders to her security teams. They needed to get to the recreation hub before the humans did. They needed to control this situation. They needed to prevent a massacre. Back in the recreation hub, Minho had positioned himself between Yuna and Vrek. He was still calm, still quiet. But his eyes never left the young Torvan. "Help is coming," he said to Yuna without looking at her. "Hold on, little one. Help is coming." Vrek snorted. "Help? What help? More soft things for me to break?" Minho almost smiled. Almost. "You have no idea," he said softly, "what you have done." The lockdown confused everyone. All across the station, people stopped what they were doing and looked around in alarm. Corridor doors sealed shut with heavy metallic clangs. The transit system froze, leaving pods suspended in their tubes. Shop owners pulled down their shutters. Parents grabbed their children and held them close. The station's AI repeated the same message over and over: security emergency in progress. Please remain in your current location. Do not attempt to move between sections. This is not a drill. But the humans were not listening. They moved through the station like water through cracks in stone. The sealed doors were not designed to stop determined engineers. Taiho had the access codes. So did 3 other human technicians. They opened paths through the locked corridors, and other humans followed. Nobody tried to stop them. The few aliens who saw them coming stepped aside quickly. There was something in the humans' faces, something in the way they walked, that made it very clear. Getting in their way would be a terrible idea. Taiho reached the recreation hub first. He was out of breath, his heart pounding so hard he could feel it in his throat. When he saw Yuna lying on the floor, small and pale and crying, the world seemed to narrow down to a single point. His daughter, his little star, broken. He ran to her and dropped to his knees. Her arm was bent wrong, clearly broken. Blood soaked her sleeve from the claw wounds. Her face was wet with tears, but she was alive. She was alive. "Appa," she whispered. "It hurts." "I know, baby." "I know." His voice cracked. He wanted to hold her, but he was afraid of making the pain worse. "Help is coming. You are going to be okay." Medical staff arrived moments later, led by Nurse Prella. She was Velith, an insectoid species known for their healing skills. Her forearms moved quickly and efficiently, scanning Yuna's injuries, applying pain relief, and stabilizing her broken arm. "Broken radius and ulna," she reported. "Deep lacerations on the upper arm. Bruised ribs. No internal bleeding detected. She will recover fully with proper treatment." Taiho closed his eyes and let out a breath he did not know he had been holding. Somi arrived next, pushing through the gathering crowd. When she saw Yuna, she made a sound that was half sob, half gasp. She knelt beside her daughter and took her uninjured hand, squeezing gently. "My brave girl," she whispered. My brave, brave girl. More humans arrived. Minho was still standing guard, watching over the scene with those empty eyes. Jiho, the human security chief, walked in with 4 other humans behind him. They spread out across the room without being asked, positioning themselves at doors and windows like soldiers taking defensive positions dot in the corner of the room. Rek was being held by 2 station security officers. He looked smaller now, somehow, less confident. His eyes darted between the growing number of humans, and for the first time, he seemed to realize that something was very wrong. Commander Alice arrived with more security officers and tried to take control of the situation. "Everyone please remain calm," she said, her Felhari voice high and nervous. "The situation is under control. The injured child is receiving medical attention. The perpetrator is in custody." Jiho looked at her with cold eyes. "With respect, Commander, the situation is not under control until we say it is." Before Alice could respond, the main door burst open again. Ambassador Dren stormed into the room. He was massive even for a Torvan, his scales darker and his eyes meaner than his son's. Gold symbols of rank decorated his chest. 2 Torvan guards flanked him. "What is the meaning of this?" He roared. "Why is my son being held? Release him immediately." Alice stepped forward, trying to position herself between the ambassador and the humans. "Ambassador, there's been an incident. Your son attacked a child. He must be held while we investigate." "Attacked?" Drem laughed, a booming sound that echoed off the walls. "That weak little plaything? My son was simply playing. It is natural for a young Tovan to establish dominance over a lesser species. This is normal behavior." The room went very, very quiet. Taiho stood up slowly. He turned to face the ambassador. His hands were steady now. His face was calm, but something dangerous burned behind his eyes. "Your son," he said, his voice low and flat, "broke my daughter's arm. He tore open her flesh with his claws. He threw her against a wall like garbage." Each sentence was precise, controlled. "And you call this playing?" Dren sneered down at him. "What does it matter? She is small and soft. She will heal. Torvan children do worse to each other every day. It builds strength. Your kind are simply too weak to understand." Somi rose to stand beside her husband. Her diplomatic training was the only thing keeping her voice steady. "Ambassador Dren, under the Galactic Compact, all species have equal protection under law. Your son committed assault against a minor. There will be consequences." "Consequences?" Dren took a step forward, using his massive size to intimidate. "You dare threaten me? You humans are guests on this station. You have no power here. You have no weapons, no strength, no natural defenses. You are nothing but soft-pink prey that somehow learned to talk. And you think you can threaten a Torvan ambassador?" Jiho stepped forward. He was not as tall as Dren, not even close. But something about the way he moved made the Torvan pause. "Ambassador," Jiho said calmly, "I recommend you stop speaking now." Dren's eyes narrowed. "Or what?" Jiho smiled. It was a small smile, quiet and cold. It did not reach his eyes. "You asked what humans are. You call us soft, weak, prey." He tilted his head slightly. "Would you like to know what we really are?" The other humans in the room had not moved. They had not raised their voices or made threats. They simply stood there, watching, waiting. But there was something in their stillness that was more frightening than any roar or snarl. "Commander," Alice felt her fur standing on end. She had seen this before. This quiet, patient menace. It was the look of predators who had already decided their prey would die and were simply choosing the moment. "Perhaps," she said quickly, stepping between Jiho and the ambassador, "we should continue this discussion in a more formal setting. I will convene an emergency tribunal. Both parties can present their cases. Justice will be served according to Galactic Compact law. Dren glared at her but nodded sharply. Fine, but my son will be released into my custody during the proceedings. No, Taiho said. The single word carried more weight than 1,000 arguments. You do not get to make demands, human. Taiho looked at the ambassador with eyes that held nothing but cold certainty. Your son stays in custody. If he is released, even for a moment, there will be no tribunal. There will be no discussion. There will only be consequences. Dren opened his mouth to argue, but something in Taiho's face stopped him. For just a second, the Torvan ambassador felt something he had not felt in decades. He felt doubt. Commander Alice seized the moment. The child will remain in station custody for everyone's safety. The tribunal will convene in 2 hours. All parties will have the chance to speak. She looked at both groups with desperate eyes. Please, let us handle this properly. Let us have peace. Slowly, reluctantly, both sides backed down. The Torvan guards escorted Vrek away under heavy security. Ambassador Dren followed, his tail lashing with barely contained fury. When they were gone, Somi knelt back down beside Yuna. The little girl had been watching everything with wide, frightened eyes. Mama, she whispered, why are they so angry? I did not do anything wrong. Somi brushed the hair from her daughter's face. No, sweetheart. You did nothing wrong. Some people are just mean. But we are going to make sure this never happens again. Taiho crouched beside them, his hand resting gently on Yuna's head. Rest now, little star, he said softly. Everything is going to be okay. But over her head, his eyes met Jiho's. A silent message passed between them. This was not over. Not by a long way. The tribunal was held in the station's main diplomatic chamber. It was a large circular room with tiered seating for observers and a central platform for speakers. Normally, it was used for trade negotiations and cultural exchanges. Today, it felt more like a courtroom. Commander Alice sat at the head of the chamber, flanked by 2 neutral arbitrators from species that had no ties to either humans or Torvan. She had spent the last 2 hours reviewing laws, precedents, and historical records. What she found had not made her feel better. The observer seats were packed. Word had spread across the station about what happened. Representatives from dozens of species had come to watch. They whispered among themselves, casting nervous glances at the humans seated on one side and the Torvan on the other. Ambassador Dren sat with his guards, looking confident and bored. Vrek sat beside him, his wounds from being restrained treated and bandaged. The young Torvan seemed less certain now, but he still held his head high. On the human side, Taiho sat in the front row with Somi beside him. Yuna was in the medical bay, resting and being watched over by Minho and 2 other humans. The rest of the human community filled the rows behind them. 40 faces, all watching, all waiting. Jiho stood at the back, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the Torvan delegation. Commander Alice called the tribunal to order. We are here to address the incident that occurred today in the recreation hub. A juvenile Torvan, Vrek, son of Ambassador Dren, attacked a human child, Yuna, daughter of Taiho and Somi. The child suffered a broken arm, deep lacerations, and bruised ribs. We will hear from both parties and determine appropriate justice under Galactic Compact law. Ambassador Dren stood first. He did not ask permission. This tribunal is a waste of time, he declared. Under Torvan law, juveniles are expected to assert dominance over weaker beings. It is how we build strength. My son did nothing wrong by Torvan standards. The human child was simply too weak to handle normal interaction. If anything, her parents should be ashamed for raising such a fragile offspring. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Several species looked uncomfortable. The Torvan were known for their aggressive culture, but hearing it stated so plainly was still shocking. Dren continued, I demand that my son be released immediately and all charges dropped. Furthermore, I expect an apology from the humans for this embarrassing overreaction. A station lockdown? Over a minor scuffle between children? Ridiculous. He sat down, looking smug. Commander Alice turned to the human delegation. Who speaks for the humans? Somi stood. Her face was calm, but her eyes were hard as stone. I speak for us. She walked to the central platform and faced the assembly. Her voice was clear and steady. Ambassador Dren speaks of Torvan law. He speaks of his culture and his traditions. But we are not on a Torvan world. We are on a neutral station governed by the Galactic Compact. And the Compact is very clear. All species are equal under the law. A child of one species cannot attack a child of another without consequence. Dren snorted. Equal? Humans are barely a century into space travel. The Torvan have been a galactic power for 3,000 years. We are not equal. Somi ignored him and continued. Article 17 of the Galactic Compact states that all species retain the right to proportional justice for attacks on their young. This law exists because every species, no matter how different, understands that children are sacred. They must be protected. She pulled out a datapad and projected a list onto the chamber's main screen. I have found 17 precedents where this article was invoked. In 12 cases, the offending party was fined and expelled from the station. In 3 cases, the offending party was handed over to the victim species for punishment. In 2 cases, she paused. The victim species invoked blood right. The room went very quiet. Blood right was an old law, rarely used. It allowed a victim's family to demand physical justice against the attacker. It was brutal and primitive, which was exactly why it still existed. Some crimes could not be paid for with fines or apologies. Ambassador Dren stood again, his scales flushing darker with anger. You cannot be serious. Blood right? Against a child? Against my son? You soft little creatures think you can threaten us with violence? He laughed, a deep rumbling sound that made the smaller species in the room flinch. Humans have no claws, no venom, no natural armor. You are the weakest species in this room. What could you possibly do to us? We are Torvan. We are born warriors. Our children are stronger than your adults. Somi did not respond. She simply looked at Jiho and nodded. Jiho walked forward. His footsteps echoed in the silent chamber. He stopped at the central platform and activated a holographic display. An image appeared above the platform. A blue and green planet, swirled with white clouds, orbited by a single gray moon. This is Earth, Jiho said. Our homeworld. He let the image rotate for a moment, beautiful and peaceful. Then he changed the display. Earth is classified by the Galactic Survey as a Category 12 death world. The words hung in the air. Several species gasped. Category 12 was the second highest danger rating. Only Category 13 worlds were considered more lethal, and most of those were completely uninhabitable. Jiho continued. Our planet has extreme temperature variations, ranging from frozen wastelands to burning deserts. Our atmosphere contains a highly corrosive gas that most species cannot breathe for more than a few minutes. Our oceans cover 70% of the surface and are filled with predators. Our land masses are home to venomous insects, poisonous plants, and carnivores that can weigh over 1,000 kilograms. The display showed images of Earth's wildlife: lions, sharks, crocodiles, wolves, bears. We evolved alongside these creatures. We hunted them. We were hunted by them. And we won. We drove many of them to extinction. Not because we were stronger or faster or had bigger claws. but because we never stopped. We tracked our prey for days, weeks, until they collapsed from exhaustion. We call it persistence hunting. We are the monsters that chase you until you cannot run anymore. Ambassador Dren's expression had changed. He was listening now. We survived ice ages that covered our planet in frozen death. We survived supervolcanoes that blotted out our sun. We survived a global extinction event that killed most life on our world. And every time, we came back stronger. Jiho looked directly at Dren. We split the atom and walked on our moon within the same century. We looked at wolves and thought, I want one, and we turned them into loyal companions. We domesticated fire itself. We are not soft, Ambassador. We simply do not need to prove our strength every moment of every day. He turned off the display. Your son broke a human child's arm. He made her bleed. He made her scream. Jiho's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried to every corner of the room. Do you understand what humans do when our children scream? Ambassador Dren, for the first time in the tribunal, said nothing. The silence stretched on. Commander Alice looked between the two parties, desperately trying to find a path forward. Perhaps, she said carefully, we can reach a compromise. The Torvan delegation will leave the station immediately. Vrek will be confined until departure. Ambassador Dren will issue a formal apology for his son's actions. In return, the humans will not invoke blood right. Dren's scales flushed with humiliation. Apologize? To these creatures? Never. I would rather fight every human on this station than bend my neck to weak prey. Taiho stood. The room fell silent as he walked to the central platform. He was not a large man. He was not a warrior. He was an engineer who fixed machines and played with his daughter before bedtime. But when he spoke, every being in the room listened. Then we invoked the old law, he said. Single combat. Your son against me. If I win, your delegation leaves and never returns to any human-inhabited station. If your son wins, we drop all charges and issue the apology you wanted. Dren stared at him. Then he laughed again, though this time it sounded less confident. You? A tiny human against my son? He will tear you apart in seconds. Taiho's expression did not change. Then you have nothing to fear. Accept the challenge. The chamber erupted in noise. Species shouted objections and support in equal measure. Commander Alice tried to restore order, but Dren was looking at Taiho with new eyes. There was no fear in the human's face. No hesitation. Just cold, patient certainty. It should have been impossible. But somehow, Ambassador Dren felt like he was the one being hunted. Fine, he said at last. My son accepts your challenge. Tomorrow. Central Arena. No weapons. He smiled with all his teeth. I hope your daughter enjoys watching her father die. Taiho simply nodded. Tomorrow then. The Central Arena had not been used for combat in over 50 years. It was a large circular space with high walls, designed in the station's early days when disputes between species were sometimes settled with blood instead of words. The floor was covered in soft sand to absorb impacts. The walls were reinforced to contain whatever violence happened within. Today, every seat was filled. Species that usually avoided each other sat side by side, united by curiosity and fear. The observation windows on the upper levels were packed with faces. Even the station's maintenance drones had stopped their work to watch. Commander Alice stood on a raised platform, serving as the official witness. She looked pale and worried. She had tried all night to stop this fight, to find another way. But both parties had refused. The challenge had been issued and accepted. There was no going back. On one side of the arena, Vrek stretched his massive limbs. He was confident, almost excited. He had sparred with other Torvan juveniles many times and always won. This soft little human would be easy. He would make it hurt. He would make it slow. And then everyone would remember why the Torvan were feared. Ambassador Dren stood behind him, arms crossed, smiling. On the other side of the arena, Taiho waited calmly. He had removed his outer jacket and stood in simple clothes, his feet bare on the sand. He did not stretch or warm up. He simply stood there, breathing slowly, his eyes fixed on his opponent. The other humans lined the nearest section of seats. Somi sat in the front row, her face pale but determined. Beside her, in a hovering medical chair, was Yuna. Her arm was in a regeneration cast, and she was still weak from her injuries. But she had insisted on being there. She needed to see. Appa can win, right? She whispered to her mother. He has to win. Somi squeezed her daughter's hand. Your father is stronger than he looks, sweetheart. Just watch. Jiho stood at the arena entrance with his arms crossed. Minho was beside him, along with a dozen other humans. None of them looked worried. They looked like they were waiting for something they had seen before. Something inevitable. Commander Alice raised her hand. This combat will follow traditional rules. No weapons. No outside interference. The fight continues until one party surrenders, loses consciousness, or is unable to continue. Is this understood? Rek laughed. Understood. Let us begin. Taiho simply nodded. Oliss took a breath. Begin. Rek charged. He moved with terrifying speed, his powerful legs driving him across the sand like a missile. His claws were extended, his jaws open. He expected to end this in seconds. One strike, one broken human, one victory. Taiho stepped to the side. Rek missed completely. His momentum carried him forward, and he barely managed to stop before hitting the arena wall. He spun around, confused and angry. Stand still. He roared. He charged again. Faster this time. More focused. Taiho stepped aside again. Barely moved at all. Just shifted his weight at the last possible moment and let the massive Torvan rush past him. The crowd murmured. This was not a fight. This was something else. Rek attacked again and again. He slashed with his claws, snapped with his jaws, swung his tail like a weapon. Every single time, Taiho was not there. He moved just enough to avoid each strike, never more than necessary. He did not run. He did not hide. He simply was not where the attacks landed. 10 minutes passed. Rek was breathing hard now. His movements were slower, less precise. Torvan were built for short, explosive violence. Their bodies were powerful, but not efficient. They were sprinters, not marathoners. Taiho had not even broken a sweat. What is wrong with you? Rek gasped. Why do you not fight? Why do you not attack? Taiho finally spoke. His voice was calm, almost kind. I am fighting. This is how humans fight. We do not overpower our prey. We outlast it. We chase it until it cannot run anymore. Until it cannot stand. Until it gives up. He took a step forward. Then another. Slowly closing the distance. You are tired, Rek. Your legs are heavy. Your lungs are burning. And I have not even started yet. Rek's eyes widened. For the first time, he felt something he had never felt before. Fear. Real, deep, primal fear. Not of claws or teeth, but of something much worse. Of something that would never stop coming. He attacked again, desperately, wildly. Taiho dodged once more, but this time he did not simply move away. He moved closer. His hand shot out and struck a point behind Rek's knee. There was a nerve cluster there, one that Taiho had learned about from station medical files. Rek's leg collapsed. He fell to one knee with a cry of shock and pain. Taiho was already moving. A second strike, precise and controlled, to the throat. Not hard enough to kill, just hard enough to disrupt breathing. Vrek gasped, his claws going to his neck as he struggled to pull air into his lungs. A third strike. Careful, measured, to the temple. The young Torvan's eyes rolled back. He toppled forward into the sand and did not move. The arena was silent. Taiho stood over the unconscious body, his breathing steady, his face calm. He looked up at Ambassador Dren, who had gone very, very still. "Your son will live," Taiho said. "This time. Because my daughter asked me to show mercy." He stepped over Vrek's body and walked toward the edge of the arena, toward where the ambassador stood frozen. "She is 8 years old," Taiho continued. "She has a broken arm and nightmares because of your son. And she still asked me not to hurt him too badly. That is the difference between us, Ambassador. Your kind teaches your children to dominate and destroy. We teach ours to be kind, even when kindness is not deserved." He stopped directly in front of Dren. The Torvan was much larger, but somehow Taiho seemed to fill the space between them. "Spread the word among your people. Human children are not prey. They are not toys. They are not targets. If any Torvan touches a human child again, we will not stop at unconsciousness. We will not show mercy. We will hunt your kind across every station, every planet, every corner of this galaxy, until there is no one left to remember what you did." His voice dropped to a whisper. "Do you understand?" Ambassador Dren looked into Taiho's eyes and saw something ancient and terrible. Something that had hunted mammoths on frozen plains. Something that had built empires from nothing. Something that had looked at the stars and said, "Those belong to us too." He nodded slowly. "I understand." Taiho turned and walked away. The arena erupted in noise. Cheers from some species. Shocked silence from others. The Torvan guards rushed to collect Vrek's unconscious form. Ambassador Dren stood alone, his confidence shattered, his beliefs broken. Within hours, the Torvan delegation had left the station. They did not say goodbye. They did not look back. Their black ship vanished into the stars, and no one was sorry to see it go. That evening, Commander Alice added a new entry to the station's species interaction guidelines. It was simple and direct. Humans do not, under any circumstances, threaten or harm human offspring. This is not a warning. It is a survival guideline. In the medical bay, Yuna was resting in her bed. The regeneration cast hummed softly, healing her broken bones. Minho had brought her favorite candy from his shop. Somi was reading her a story about brave princesses and friendly dragons. The door opened and Taiho walked in. He looked tired but peaceful. When Yuna saw him, her face lit up. "Appa." He smiled and sat on the edge of her bed, taking her small hand in his. "Hey, little star. How are you feeling?" "Better. Mama said you won. She said you were amazing." Taiho laughed softly. "I just did what I had to do." Yuna looked at him with serious eyes. "You did not hurt him too bad, right? Like I asked?" He leaned down and kissed her forehead. "No, sweetheart. Just enough to teach him a lesson. He will be fine." She smiled and closed her eyes, finally relaxing. Somi moved to sit beside Taiho, her head resting on his shoulder. Minho quietly slipped out to give the family privacy. The room was warm and quiet and safe. Outside the medical bay's window, the stars burned cold and bright against the endless dark. Ships came and went from the station like always. Life continued, but something had changed. Across the station, in whispered conversations and nervous glances, species discussed what they had witnessed. The soft, smiling humans who worked simple jobs and traded chocolate and told bad jokes at dinner parties. They were not what they appeared to be. They were something old, something patient, something that had crawled out of a death world and refused to stop climbing. And their children were sacred dot in her bed. Una dreamed of stars and ships and distant worlds. Her father held her hand. Her mother watched over her. And 41 other humans on the station slept, a little easier knowing that their youngest member was safe. The universe was vast and dangerous, and full of terrible things, but so were they.